"Get the hell out of my club, right now." The manager's face flushed red with rage as he aggressively swiped the membership card out of Marcus's hand, sending it clattering onto the polished marble floor. He took a heavy step forward, using his hulking frame to block Marcus's 10-year-old son from catching a glimpse of the VIP lounge. "My name should be on the guest list," Marcus said, his voice low and level. He stepped half a pace forward, shielding his boy behind him, his eyes hardening. "What kind of guest list would have a guy like you on it? Pack up your family and go beg somewhere else. This is an elite marina club, not a homeless shelter." Marcus tightened his lips, not out of anger, but in the exact way a billionaire chairman of a trillion-dollar logistics empire does when dealing with a fool. The power-tripping manager had absolutely no idea that just last night the actual owner behind this club was on the phone, begging Marcus's conglomerate for a bailout. With just one phone call, this manager would be handed his walking papers before his shift even ended. Rewind 20 minutes. The beat-up navy blue Chevy Tahoe pulled into the parking lot of the Harborview Grand Marina Club. Sitting amidst a sea of gleaming supercars owned by the high society elite, the 7-year-old SUV with a dent in its side looked completely out of place, like an uninvited guest. Marcus climbed out of the driver's seat, adjusting the reading glasses folded neatly in his breast pocket. He was wearing a canvas jacket in olive green, softened by 100 washes, dark jeans, and a pair of worn-out New Balance sneakers. Not a single detail about him screamed money, and that was exactly the point for a billionaire chairman going undercover to test the waters. The manager at the VIP lounge entrance was just the first exam. He glanced at his wife Renee in the passenger seat. She was already watching him, one eyebrow slightly raised. "I just want to see it," he said quietly. "You just want to see how it runs," she said. Without a name tag. There's a difference. In the back seat, their daughter Jordan, 22 years old, was holding a small laminated card flat her thighs like she was afraid it might float away. She'd qualified for the Harborview Amateur Open, a regional sailing competition that the club had hosted every August for 31 years. She had trained for 2 years straight for that card, through a dislocated shoulder, through a summer job she'd worked nights to afford equipment, through 3 false starts and 1 qualification race where she'd come in second by 4 boat lengths and cried the whole drive home. This year she had won. Her brother Devin, 25, sat beside her scrolling his phone. He was quieter than he used to be since coming back from his second deployment. Not broken, just calibrated differently. He noticed things in rooms before other people noticed they were in rooms. Marcus had bought Harborview Marina Holdings 3 weeks ago for $173 million. The deal had closed on a Tuesday afternoon in a law office on Peachtree Street in Atlanta. He'd signed the papers with the same pen his father had used to sign his first lease on a barber shop in Savannah, Georgia, 41 years earlier. A heavy ballpoint with a chrome clip and a crack along the barrel that Marcus had repaired with a strip of electrical tape and never replaced. He kept that pen in his jacket pocket. He had it with him now. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. He wanted to see the real club, not the version they'd put on for the new owner. He wanted to see who got welcomed at the door and who didn't. He wanted to feel the room the way a regular guest felt it, before anyone had a reason to be different. The lobby of Harborview Grand was all pale wood and nautical brass, the kind of carefully curated wealth that wanted to look like it had always been there. Model sailboats in glass cases, framed race charts on every wall, a chandelier made from actual ship rope, which had probably cost someone $18,000 and looked like it cost $18,000 without quite knowing why. The marble floors were the color of seafoam. A string quartet played something Marcus didn't recognize near the far windows, overlooking the dock. Behind the reception desk stood a woman in her late 40s named Dorothy Reese. She sorted afternoon mail with practiced, unhurried hands. A thick envelope sat apart from the stack, cream-colored, sealed, stamped with a logo Marcus recognized immediately, Holloway Group. Acquisition and transition notice, the letter his attorneys had sent 3 days ago outlining the ownership transfer and new management protocols. Dorothy's supervisor had walked past it that morning, flicked it with 2 fingers, and told her to sort it into the compliance pile. Corporate noise, he'd said. Nobody upstairs reads that stuff until the lawyers make them. Dorothy had nodded, but she hadn't filed it. She'd set it aside in her own drawer, separate from everything else, the way you save something when your gut says, "Don't let this disappear." She noticed the Holloway family come in. She noticed things. Across the lobby, at the corner bar, a woman in white linen slacks and a silk blouse the color of good champagne was nursing her second mimosa before 10 in the morning. Her name was Brittany Alderton. She'd been a member at Harborview for 11 years, and she treated membership the way some people treat a flag, not just belonging somewhere, but owning the sky above it. Her eyes tracked the Holloway family from the door and didn't let go. She said something to the man beside her, quiet and pointed. He laughed without smiling. Marcus felt it. He always felt it. He'd spent a lifetime walking into rooms that adjusted their temperature by 1 degree when he walked in, and he'd learned to read that shift the way you read a barometer. He said nothing. He filed it. He kept walking. Jordan held her qualifying card tighter without seeming to. Devin clocked the exits without appearing to look up from his phone. Renee squeezed Marcus's hand once. He squeezed back, and for a few more minutes it was just a family on a Saturday morning, walking toward what should have been a good day. A blazer stepped into their path. The man who wore it was named Raymond Clegg. He was 54, the general manager of Harborview Grand, and he'd held that position for 19 years. He had silver hair swept back from a high forehead, a face kept tan by a standing tanning bed appointment on Thursday afternoons, and a smile that was technically a smile the way a cardboard cutout is technically a person. He wore a gold lapel pin shaped like a small anchor. His shoes cost $680, and he needed everyone near him to know it without knowing how they knew. He had built Harborview into what it was, he believed. He had curated its membership, enforced its standards, protected its reputation from what he privately called the drift. He had a phrase he used in the back offices when he thought the right people were listening. He said it with a knowing nod, like a man reading a room correctly. The phrase was not the right fit. In 19 years, he had applied that phrase to a specific kind of application, a specific kind of face, a specific kind of family walking through a door in canvas jackets and sneakers on a Saturday morning. His smile landed on the Holloways like something dropped. "Can I help you find something?" he said. The "can I help you" was a theater prop. It meant, "You don't have a reason to be here, and I'm giving you one chance to admit it." Marcus said they were there for brunch. And for his daughter's sailing competition, they had a reservation. Clegg tilted his head, a small, perforce gesture. He looked them up and down with the deliberate pace of a man who wanted them to feel the looking. The canvas jacket, the sneakers, Devin's casual shirt, the paper bag of road food Renee had set down near the door. He didn't check the reservation book. "I think you may have the wrong venue," he said pleasantly. "Harborview is a private membership facility, not a walk-in." "We have a reservation," Marcus said again, his voice exactly the same. "Party of 4, Holloway, and I'm telling you I don't see one." Clegg still hadn't looked. Behind the desk, Dorothy Reese's hand moved toward the reservation ledger, fingers resting on the open page. She could see the name from where she stood. Holloway, Party of 4, waterfront table, 9:30 confirmed. She opened her mouth. Clegg's eyes cut to her for exactly half a second. She went still. Pay attention to that moment. It cost her nothing to go still. It cost someone else everything. "It would take you 30 seconds to check the book," Marcus said. "It's going to take you 30 seconds to turn around," Clegg said, louder now, letting it carry. A few faces turned at nearby tables. The string quartet kept playing, oblivious like background music to a scene it couldn't read. Marcus said, "Check the book." Clegg said, "I know who belongs in my club." That was the first escalation, the mask off. The architecture of the whole morning suddenly visible, but Clegg wasn't finished. He turned to the lobby with the practiced ease of a man who knew he had an audience and knew how to use one. "We have this every season," he announced to the nearest tables, his voice warm with fake weary patience. "People who see a picture of the marina online and decide to come try their luck. And then when someone asks them politely to go, they make a whole production of it." He looked back at Marcus. "I'm asking you politely. This is still polite. It won't stay polite if we keep going." He looked at the paper bag near the door. He smiled. "You can't bring outside food into a private dining facility. That's a health code issue right there." He pointed at it. "That's just one of many problems I'm already seeing," Renee said evenly. "Sir, my daughter has a qualifying card for your sailing competition. She earned that card. We have a confirmed reservation. All we are asking is that you look." Clegg looked at Renee the way he might look at a piece of furniture that had spoken. His eyes moved past her like she was part of the scenery. "Ma'am," he let the words sit, "I run this club. I don't take instructions from people who drove up from wherever and decided today was the day to test their luck." He paused. "There are options more suitable for your family. I can give you some recommendations if you'd like." The lobby had gone quiet. Not the polite quiet of attention, the stifling quiet of a room that has decided it would rather not see what's happening. Renee's jaw tightened. She didn't look away from Clegg. Jordan pressed the qualifying card against her thigh with her thumb. The corner of it was already bent from how hard she'd been holding it. Devin set his phone down and very slowly looked up. When Devin looked up slowly, Marcus had learned, it meant his son was making a decision about how still to stay. And Brittany Alderton at the bar slid off her stool and drifted closer. She had her phone out. She went live. 11,000 followers, and she gave them what they wanted without knowing what she was handing them. Her caption read, "Harborview keeps the standards up. Watch this." She panned across the Holloway family with the easy confidence of a woman who'd never once worried about who was filming her. Remember that? She was about to worry. Clegg summoned security with a raised hand, a broad-shouldered man named Victor Stalls. Green polo, laminated badge, the slow walk of some who saves his energy for the moment it counts, pushed off the wall near the bar and moved toward them. He arrived with his chest out and his thumbs hooked in his belt, and he stood just close enough to Marcus to make the geometry of the space into a statement. "Time to move along," Stalls said. "Clubs at capacity for walk-ins. We're not walk-ins," Marcus said. "You're a problem," Stalls said. "That's the only category I care about." His hand went to Devin's arm. "Not hard, just present, establishing the fact of itself." Devin looked down at the hand, then up at Stalls. The look was not angry. It was the particular look of a man who has been trained to assess threats accurately and is currently assessing. "Take your hand off my arm," Devin said. His voice didn't shake. He had been in places where shaking was a luxury you couldn't afford. "There are cameras on you. I've already counted 3. Whatever you do next is on film." Stalls's hand came off. Slowly, like a tide going out reluctantly, but he circled behind the family instead, boxing the space, making the message physical. "This is the shape of your options." Clegg pressed harder, the way men like Clegg always press when they smell certainty. He stepped in close to Marcus and dropped his voice to the register that meant, "This is just for you. This is just a warning, and it is absolutely for everyone within 15 feet. Here is what happens now," he said. "You leave quietly. Or I call the police and tell them we have trespassers refusing to leave private property after being asked multiple times. And you will explain to them why you're still here, and they will believe me." He let that settle. They always believe the manager. They always believe the club. He reached out and plucked the qualifying card from Jordan's hand. He did it fast, the way you snatch something from a child before they know to hold tighter. Jordan's hand stayed in the shape of holding it for a full second before she registered it was gone. That half second, the hand that still thought it was holding something, was the thing that broke the air in the room. She was 22. She had trained for 2 years. She had a dislocated shoulder that had healed wrong and still ached in the cold. She had slept in her car one night before a qualification race because the hotel was too expensive and she didn't want her parents to pay. She had come in second by 4 boat lengths and cried the whole drive home and come back and done it again until she won. Clegg held the card up where everyone could see it. Then he tore it, one clean motion. 2 halves, he dropped them on the marble floor. "Whoops," he said. He was still smiling when he said it. Nobody moved. The 2 halves of the card lay in the morning light coming through the tall nautical windows. The string quartet, and this is the part that stays with you, kept playing, soft and bright like a celebration. Renee bent down, both halves. She picked them up with the deliberate care of someone who has decided not to give a room the satisfaction of seeing her react. She straightened. She tucked them into her purse. She looked at Clegg with the specific expression of a woman who has already decided what she thinks and no longer needs to perform it for anyone. "Baby," Jordan said, barely audible, "I know," Renee said. "Watch your father." Marcus had not moved. He had not raised his voice once. Not one word louder than conversational. He had his hands loose at his sides and his weight even on both feet, and the reading glasses still folded in his breast pocket, and the old pen still in his jacket, and the expression of a man waiting for a machine he has already set in motion to finish its cycle. He looked at Clegg for a long moment, then he looked at the pen in his pocket. He touched it once through the canvas with 2 fingers. A private gesture, just for himself. Then he reached into his jacket and stalls went rigid and took a half step, and everyone in a 15-foot radius held their breath, and Raymond Clegg smiled the smile of a man who believed he had already won. Marcus pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a name. He pressed call. He raised it to his ear. The lobby held its breath. 1 ring, 2. A voice came on, professional, clipped, already in motion. "Marcus, tell me where you are." That was Sandra Park. General Counsel, Holloway Group. She did not do warm-up. She did not do small talk. She had been in his corner for 16 years through deals that would have turned anyone else's hair white. She spoke the way someone speaks when they've spent their career watching people underestimate each other. "Harborview Grand Marina Club," Marcus said. "I'm in the lobby. I need you to pull the transition documents, the ownership transfer package, the management authority clause. I need them sent to the club's reception printer in the next 5 minutes." A pause, the brief sound of a chair. "Already done," Sandra said, "sending now." She hung up. Clegg burst out laughing. He turned to the lobby, arms wide, the performance of a man who had never once been wrong about a room. "Folks, we've got ourselves a situation," he announced. He called his attorney. He let that land like a punchline. "From my lobby." "Because I asked him to use the front door." Laughter rippled through the tables, not loud, the tentative, uncomfortable laughter of people who want permission to find something funny. Brittany Alderton laughed behind her phone. She was still live. But here is the thing about Marcus Holloway that nobody in that lobby understood it yet, because they had decided what they were looking at before they looked. The man had not raised his voice. Not once. In 19 minutes of deliberate humiliation, he had not raised his voice, changed his posture, or unclenched his hands from their easy position at his sides. And people who don't raise their voices in those situations are not the ones who lose. Dorothy Reese, behind the desk, had stopped pretending to sort mail entirely. Her hands were flat on the counter. Her eyes were moving between the Holloway family and Clegg and the far wall behind the desk, where the reception printer sat in its alcove. She had worked Harborview's front desk for 14 years. She had watched Raymond Clegg do versions of this before, quieter, quicker, less theatrical, but the same architecture. A family that didn't look the way Clegg thought a family should look. A reason invented on the spot, an exit suggested before a check was ever made. She had flinched from it every time. She had told herself it wasn't her place. She had told herself there was nothing she could do. She had 19 years of practice at being helpless, and she had stopped believing it 15 minutes into this Saturday morning. The printer woke up. The sound of it was small in that big lobby, a low hum, a mechanical whisper. But Dorothy heard it. She turned toward it. The first page slid out, face up. She read the letterhead, Holloway Group, Office of Acquisition and Management Transition. The second page. The third. She read faster, her eyes moving down the columns of legal language she'd been trained to sort into compliance piles without reading. Then she got to the last page. She got to the signature. The lobby was still loud with Clegg's performance, the members laughing, with Brittany Alderton narrating warmly to 11,000 people who were about to have a very different morning than they'd planned. Nobody was watching Dorothy Reese. Dorothy picked up the pages. She walked out from behind the desk. Her hands were shaking, actually trembling, the papers rustling, but her feet moved in a straight line, and her voice, when she finally used it, came out clear. "Mr. Clegg." She stopped. Swallowed. "Mr. Clegg, you need to stop." Clegg waved her off without turning. "Not now, Dorothy." "Sir," louder. "Sir, I need you to stop talking. Something in it. The sound of a voice that has been swallowing itself for 14 years and has finally run out of room, cut through." The lobby turned toward her the way a crowd turns toward an unexpected sound. Dorothy held up the pages. Her hands were still shaking. She turned to the room. "This is a legal notice of ownership transfer," she said. "Filed and signed 3 weeks ago." She read from the first page, slowly, so nothing could be missed. Harborview Marina Holdings, LLC, including all land structures, docking facilities, and associated membership records, was acquired in full by Holloway Group, Inc. For the sum of $173 million, she looked up. The acquisition was completed through the Coastal Holdings Bankruptcy Trust. The seller is the former Langford family estate. The word Holloway dropped into the room like a stone into still water. The new sole owner, Dorothy went on, her voice finding its footing word by word, holds full management authority over all club operations, all employment contracts, and all membership decisions effective immediately upon signing. She turned the last page around so the room could see the signature block. The owner's name is on the last page. She pointed to the signature, Marcus Holloway. For 4 full seconds, nobody said anything. A spoon clinked against crystal somewhere, a tiny silver sound. The string quartet finished a phrase and went quiet, as if the music itself was listening. Raymond Clegg's face did something that took a while to complete. The certainty peeled back first, then the contempt, then the public warmth he'd been performing all morning. What was underneath all of it was not what you might expect. It wasn't panic. It was the specific expression of a man whose entire internal map of the world has just been told it was drawn wrong, and who cannot, will not, process that information, even now. "That's not possible," he said. His voice was still steady. "Anyone can print a letterhead. It came from your corporate fax line, Mr. Clegg," Dorothy said. She held up the cream envelope from her drawer. Still sealed, still stamped with the Holloway Group logo, the one his supervisor had waved away as corporate noise 3 days ago. "It matches this, which your office received on Wednesday morning and filed as junk mail." The front doors opened. A woman in a dark blazer walked in with the pace of someone who has been moving fast for 20 minutes. Her name was Elaine Cortez, chair of the Harborview Advisory Board. She had gotten Sandra Park's call on the way to her car and turned straight around. She was the person who had tried to address Clegg's conduct 3 times in the last 5 years, each time blocked by the Langford family's old board, who liked their numbers and disliked inconvenience. She looked at Marcus. She stopped, "Mr. Holloway." Her voice was clear. The whole lobby could hear it. "We were not informed you would be visiting in person today. I apologize for that." She looked at Renee, at Jordan, at the purse where 2 halves of a qualifying card were tucked, at Devin, who had not moved, who was watching everything with the steady patience of someone trained to wait for the right moment. Then she looked at Clegg. Her expression was the expression of a woman who has waited 5 years for something and does not intend to waste it. "Raymond," she said quietly. Clegg's mouth worked. "Elaine, there's been I was enforcing club policy. Security protocols. We had no way to verify. You didn't ask," Marcus said. His voice was still the same. No louder, no edge in it, just present, flat, filling the room the way silence fills a room by removing everything else. "You didn't ask who I was," Marcus said. "You told me what I was. There is a difference." Clegg straightened. The last of the charm slid off his face, and what was left was the bare thing underneath it. The thing that had run this club for 19 years. "I have rights," he said. "I have a contract. A conduct clause is subjective. I was protecting club property. Any reasonable board would—" "Read the clause," Sandra Park said. Everyone turned. She had arrived through the side entrance, phone in one hand, a leather folder in the other, 11 minutes after she'd hung up, because she'd been in the parking lot the whole time, waiting. She had been waiting because she had been down this road with Marcus before. She knew when to be parked outside a building. She opened the folder. She read the conduct clause aloud. It was not ambiguous. It was not subjective. It listed 11 specific categories of behavior that constituted immediate cause for termination. Clegg had hit 7 of them in the last 20 minutes, on camera, in front of 42 people. And on Brittany Alderton's live stream, which was now being watched by 14,000 people, because it had been shared 17 times in the last 9 minutes by people who recognized what they were watching before Brittany did. Brittany was not narrating anymore. She was watching the numbers on her screen go up and her caption, "Harborview keeps the standards up. Watch this." Sit beneath the footage of a man tearing a young woman's qualifying card in half and saying, "Whoops," and she understood, suddenly and completely and too late, that she had personally filmed, captioned, and distributed the most expensive video of her life. Her thumb stabbed at the end stream button. "Keep rolling," Marcus said without looking at her. Quiet, almost gentle. "You said it yourself. It's a public space. You can film whatever you want." He paused. "You're going to want that footage. So will a lot of people with law degrees." Brittany's hand went still. Clegg made one more attempt. It was the attempt of a drowning man grabbing at something that is not there. "You don't understand what I've built here," he said, and there was something almost real in his voice for the first time. Not remorse, nothing close to remorse, but the genuine bewilderment of a man who has never once been told he was wrong by anyone who had the power to make it stick. 19 years of keeping this club what it is. The membership list, the standards, the reputation, that is all mine. You walk in here in a jacket and sneakers, and you think you understand what I've been protecting. "Sit down," Marcus said. Clegg stopped. "In the lobby you told my family they didn't belong in," Marcus said. "Sit down, because the next conversation is going to take a while, and you should be sitting for it." And Raymond Clegg, $680 shoes, sat down. The room did not exhale. It was too stunned to exhale. It just went still like water that's been disturbed and is deciding what shape to settle into. Marcus turned to Elaine Cortez. "I want every personnel file," he said, "every membership application, every complaint record going back to the beginning of his tenure. All of it." "I have a folder," she said. "I've kept one for 4 years. 31 complaints. I brought it with me." She put it in his hands. 31, 19 years, almost 2 a year. Filed, documented, preserved by a woman who knew someday someone would have the authority to open them. He handed it to Sandra without opening it. Sandra noted the spine of it, the thickness, the weight of it, and said nothing. She would open it later, in a law office. Under proper lighting, Marcus turned to Victor Stalls, the security guard, who had moved to the absolute edge of the lobby and was trying to achieve architectural invisibility. "You put your hands on my son," Marcus said. "That's on camera, too. Talk to a lawyer before you talk to anyone else." "That's not a threat. It's the only good advice you're going to get today." Stalls nodded once, the nod of a man trying to take up as little space as possible, and said nothing. Then Marcus turned to his staff. The waiters stood against the far wall, the desk clerks, the sommelier, the young woman who'd been arranging fresh flowers in a vase by the window and had simply stopped moving when everything started. They were all watching him with the careful, tensed posture of people waiting for the other shoe. He looked at them for a moment. "None of this is on you," he said. "All of you kept your jobs today. What happened here this morning is not your story, it's his. Go back to work." The young woman with the flowers started to cry, the quiet kind, the kind that has nothing to do with sadness and everything to do with relief arriving after a long time away. Dorothy Reese was still standing by the desk with the pages in her hands when Marcus walked over to her. He stopped in front of her. He didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at her with the specific attention of a man who sees exactly what he's looking at. "You kept that envelope," he said. "Yes, sir, and you had the reservation. You saw it, and you kept it." Her chin trembled once. "I've worked this desk for 14 years, she said. I've seen it before. Not this bad, but the shape of it, and I never." She stopped. "I couldn't be part of it again." Not one more time. Marcus reached into his jacket. He took out the pen, old ballpoint chrome clip, crack along the barrel fixed with a strip of electrical tape. He turned it once in his fingers. "My father had a barber shop on Waters Avenue in Savannah," he said. "He worked it 41 years. Somebody told him once he didn't have the right look for the neighborhood. He signed his first lease the next week with this pen." He looked at it. "I want you to know that the man who signed the papers on this building 3 weeks ago used this same pen. And I want you to know why I came here today in a canvas jacket and old sneakers." Dorothy said nothing. Her eyes were wet. "Because I needed to know what this place was," Marcus said. "The real version, not the version they put on for the owner." He looked around the lobby. "Now I know." He put the pen back in his pocket. Outside, through the tall windows overlooking the marina, you could see the morning sun on the water. It was the kind of light that doesn't care what has happened inside. It just falls where it falls. Raymond Clegg walked out through the front door of Harborview Grand Marina Club by Elaine Cortez, and 2 board members who had arrived during the last 20 minutes, called by Sandra Park from the parking lot. He walked through the lobby he'd run for 19 years, past the nautical brass and the model sailboats in their cases, past Dorothy Reese behind her desk, past the tables where members sat in the kind of silence that has decided not to perform anything. He walked through the front door and into the August heat and across the parking lot, and he sat in his car for 11 minutes before he drove away. The anchor pin on his lapel caught the sun once as the door closed behind him, then he was gone. By that night, the video existed in 600 places simultaneously. Brittany Alderton's own livestream had become the engine of it. Someone with a sharp eye had clipped the core sequence, the card snatched, the card torn, the whoops, the silence of the room. Sent it against as the moment Dorothy Reese walked out from behind the desk with shaking hands and read the ownership documents aloud. And then the moment Marcus Holloway said the name of his father's barber shop on Waters Avenue in Savannah, and people across 3 time zones watched a man explain, in 2 quiet sentences, why he was standing where he was standing. The caption that spread fastest was not angry. It simply read, "He bought the club 3 weeks ago. The manager didn't know." News stations picked it up by morning. Harborview Grand's name scrolled across the bottom of screens. Reporters stood on the dock Marcus now owned, the marina glittering behind them. And then the investigators went in. Sandra Park had been through the files by Sunday. What she found in Clegg's 19 years of records was not the story of one bad morning. It was the story of a system, membership applications from Black and Latino families marked with a notation N. TF, not the right fit, and quietly rejected while applicants with identical or weaker qualifications were approved without a second look. Promotion decisions that followed the same invisible line. A kitchen worker who had been fired for attitude 4 days after filing a written complaint about a racial slur in the service hallway. A dockhand who had been reassigned to night shifts after raising the same complaint through a different channel until his hours became impossible and he quietly resigned. A junior events coordinator who had been told her contract would not be renewed in the same week she had requested a meeting with HR about Clegg's conduct toward a member's family. One by one, former staff came forward when the investigation was announced, not all at once. First one carefully, then another. Then 4 in the same week, because people who have been convinced they were alone discover very quickly when someone opens a door that they were never alone. They were just in separate rooms. They sat across from investigators and told their stories, and a number of them said, at some point, that they had assumed it was just them, that they had assumed they'd done something wrong, misread something, been too sensitive, been the one problem in an otherwise fair place. The investigation concluded that it had never been just them. It had been the design. The civil rights case moved fast. Clegg's own files were his worst enemy, his notes in the margins of membership applications, his internal memos with language that should never have been written down, his performance reviews that followed a pattern too consistent and too directional to be coincidence. His own recorded voice, captured on Brittany Alderton's live stream, making the case for the prosecution in real time. His attorneys were expensive, and they were very good at their jobs, and none of it mattered because you cannot argue with your own handwriting. The federal judgment came down 6 months later, $3.4 million in combined civil penalties and damages to former employees. A suspended sentence contingent on 5 years of compliance monitoring. The membership discrimination findings required Harborview to open a formal review process for every rejected application filed in the last decade, with independent oversight. Victor Stalls pleaded to a misdemeanor battery charge and surrendered his security license. The licensing board noted it was not his first complaint. Brittany Alderton settled a civil suit filed by Jordan Holloway out of court in an amount she never disclosed to anyone and that her attorney advised her never to discuss. The live stream she had been so certain was documentation of someone else's embarrassment turned out to be documentation of her own. She had captioned it herself. She had panned to Jordan's face herself. She had said Harborview keeps the standards up herself 19 seconds before a man tore a young woman's qualifying card in 2 and smiled. The thing she'd bragged about, the public space, the right to film, came back to her from the direction she hadn't anticipated. She learned what that felt like. As for Raymond Clegg, he was the kind of man who had spent 19 years being right. who had built a worldview around the certainty of his own judgment, his own standards, his own carefully managed idea of who belonged where. That worldview did not shatter, not even at the end. At his sentencing, when the judge read the penalty, he shook his head slowly, the way a man shakes his head when he believes a decision is wrong. He hired a third attorney and filed an appeal. The appeal failed. His name became the kind of thing you cannot put on a resume in a certain industry, in a certain coastal region of a certain state. He had decided who belonged for 19 years from behind an anchor pin and a set of assumptions. The man who decided who belonged now belonged nowhere. And Marcus Holloway was not done. He could have sold the club. He could have taken the profit and the press coverage and built something somewhere else with his name on the gate. He could have made it an event, a story about himself. He didn't. He renamed it. Harborview Grand became Harborview Commons. The word commons meant exactly what it sounded like, and he meant it to. He opened the marina grounds to the surrounding community on weekends. Families from the neighborhoods along the coast, neighborhoods that had never had a reason to feel welcome on those docks, started appearing on Saturday mornings. Kids who had never been near a sailboat learned what a boom was, what a tiller was, what it felt like when the wind fills a sail from the right angle and the hull lifts a little and the whole machine comes alive beneath you. He launched the Holloway Open Scholarship, 3 slots per year, full funding for young sailors from underrepresented communities to train and compete at the club level. The first 3 recipients were announced in February. All 3 showed up at the dock in March in gear that Marcus had arranged to be waiting for them. He rewrote the membership application process from scratch, transparent criteria, independent review board, plain language, real penalties for bias written into the bylaws by people who knew what the old bylaws had been used to do. And Dorothy Reese, who had worked the front desk for 14 years and had never once been able to stop what she watched happen, was offered the position of general manager of Harborview Commons. Full authority, full compensation, the whole building to run the way she already knew it should be run, she cried when he offered it. Then she said yes. She said it the way you say yes to something you have been quietly ready for longer than anyone knew. 4 months later, on a bright Saturday in early fall, the lobby of Harborview Commons was loud in the way good things are loud. A family from the East Side neighborhood was getting a dock tour from a volunteer. 2 kids were arguing cheerfully about which sailboat was faster, the 14-footer or the one with the red stripe. A group of older members who had been part of Clegg's world had, some of them, come back quieter now, trying to figure out where they fit. Dorothy greeted everyone who came through the door by name because she'd spent 14 years at that desk learning everyone's names and had never had the authority to use that knowledge the way she used it now. Out on the water, Jordan Holloway was teaching a group of teenagers how to read the wind before you trim the sail. She had her hand up, feeling for the direction of it, and she was explaining something, and the teenagers were leaning in to listen in the particular way people lean when someone who has actually done the hard thing is doing the explaining. Marcus stood in the doorway between the lobby and the dock and watched his daughter out there on the water and said nothing. There was nothing to say. His hand was in his jacket pocket, 2 fingers resting against the barrel of an old pen. The 2 halves of Jordan's torn qualifying card had been framed. They hung in the main hallway near the entrance, 2 pieces of a small laminated rectangle mounted side by side on white linen backing behind glass. The plaque beneath them read, "This is who we used to turn away." No signature, no explanation, just the 2 halves of a thing that was supposed to stay broken. If this story stayed with you, not just because of what happened, but because you recognized someone in it, yourself or someone you love, on either side of that lobby, hit like so it reaches the person who needs to hear it. Share it if you know someone who's been told they don't belong somewhere they had every right to be. And leave a comment. Have you ever been in that room? Which side were you standing on when it mattered? I read every single one.